Good morning, good Tavach. Welcome to a new week, Sunday morning. Today we're learning Mishnayos Maaseros, Perek, chapter 2. Today, Shir is the sponsor of the Ilan Nishmas Aaron Nachman ben Simcha Kohen, Yeshua Mordechai ben Shepsel, Bracha Sar B'Shmuel Leib, and Binyamin Moshe ben Yosef. May the Neshamas all have an aliyah. Okay, moving right along. Haya Mishnah Aleph. Okay. Haya over Bashuk. If an Amaretz is passing through the marketplace with a basket of figs, the Amar Tzlu Lachem Te'enim, and he said to people, "Take some of my figs for yourselves as a gift." Ochlin Upeturim, so they may eat those figs as a snack, and they're putter from taking maestros first. Why? Because we assume that the Amaretz is coming home from the field with the figs and had not yet brought them home. For this reason, they may be eaten as a snack without separating maestros, because maestros only needs to be separated once they reach the entrance of the house. If they're on the way home and they're not reached the Pesach Habayis, then they're not Chayav Maestros yet. The Fichach, therefore, if the people who accepted the gift brought the figs into their homes instead of snacking on them in the market or outside, then they must separate maestros from them as definite tevel, and not just as the mai. Once they reach the Pesach Habayis, even if you got one as a gift, then you need to take maestro out. But if they would have eaten it outside in the street or in the marketplace, they would not have to. If the Amaretz had offered them figs and said, "Take these figs and bring them to your homes," lo yochlu amarai, then they may not eat them as a snack without taking meiser, because by telling them specifically that they should take them home, he's saying that that he already separated Mises from them, right? That means that he had already brought them to his home and he took Mises. But since we don't trust him about separating Mises, then because it's an Amaretz, then they cannot be eaten at all until we separate Mises from them. That's the same as any of the produce received from an Amaretz, because an Amaretz is not believed regarding the laws of Shemas Meiser. Therefore, if they brought those figs to their homes, then they separate Meises from them only as the Mai and not as Tevel. The difference, in the first case of the Mishnah, where he didn't tell them to take them home, and the figs were eaten as a snack only if he gave them a small amount. But if you give them more figs than eaten as a snack, or if you give the figs to a distinguished person, I mean, a chaver who doesn't eat in the street, then it's as if they told him to take the figs home to eat, and they must be meiser before they can eat it in any manner. Let's Mishnah Aleph. Mishnah Beis. Hayoshim b'shar avachanus. If they were sitting in the gateway of a courtyard or in a store, Amar tu lachem te'enim, and the owner of the courtyard or the store said to them, "Take for yourselves some of the figs that I have outside the courtyard or store." Ochlin upeturim. He's probably getting on samples. Ochlin upeturim. They may take figs, bring them into the courtyard or store, and eat them as a snack, and they are exempt from being mafish meisers from before eating them. However, the owner of the gateway, the owner of the courtyard, and the owner of the store are obligated to separate mice from the figs that they brought in before any of them maybe eat them. But the people they're giving them to do not. Rabbi Yehuda says that even the owner of the courtyard or the store is potter from separating meiser in the gateway of his courtyard or in the customer area of the store. Ad shiach espanav until he turns his face to the side while he eats. The people do not see him eating. He's going like this. Then he is. Then Then he has to take the meiser. Oh, ad shishena shishana makum shivaso. Or unless he changes his seat before he eats, so that he is not facing the customers while he eats. According to Yehuda, only the parts of the courtyard or the store which the owner is not embarrassed to eat set the meiser obligation. But since he's uncomfortable eating at the entrance to his courtyard or in a store facing his customers, then even if the owner himself brings the figs into these areas, they have not yet become sefer meiser and may still be snacked on. Mishnah Gimel, Hama'ala Peres min HaGalil Yehuda, someone who takes produce from his field in the Galil, which is the northern part of Israel, up to Judea to sell. But the prices are higher in Yehuda. Oh, Yerushalayim, where he goes up to Yerushalayim to sell his produce. He may eat that produce as a snack until he reaches the place where he's going. Even if he stays in the house overnight on the way, since he does not own the house in which he stays, bringing the produce in does not prohibit it. And so too on his return. If before reaching Yehuda, he decided to bring his produce back to the Galil, he may continue to eat it as a snack until he gets back to his home in the Galil. Every Meir says, he may eat it as a snack only until he reaches the place where he plans to spend Shabbos, even if it's not his final destination. Once he reaches that place, he is forbidden to snack in it even before Shabbos begins, because the place where a person stays for Shabbos is considered like his home. Peddlers who go around to all the towns in a particular area, you're selling makeup and perfume. They may eat it as a snack. They may eat the produce as a snack. They brought along with them until they reach the place where they're going to sleep that night. They figure they're sleeping on the road by a Holiday Inn or one of those cheap hotels. Then they can't eat. But if they're going house to house to sell them, then they can eat them over there. Yehuda says, Abayas Harishon Hubeso, the first house that the peddler enters in the town where he plans to spend the night is considered his house, even if he does not end up staying in that house. Therefore, if he brings produce into it, he cannot eat it without separating Maaseros. Mishnah Dalet, Perush Shetarman Ad Shelo Nigmarak Malachta. Produce from which a person is separated truma before its processing was completed is subject to the following dispute. Rabbi Eliezer prohibits eating it as a snack without separating Maaseros from it. In the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer, separating truma sets the Maaser obligation even a produce that has not been fully processed. The Chachamim matirin, but the Chachamim permit eating it as a snack. According to the Chachamim, that separating truma does not change the status of something that's not yet been fully processed. Chutz mikal keles to einim, except in the case of a basket of fresh figs, where if you separate truma from the figs before you finish processing them, they become forbidden to snack on. Well, that's because separating truma from figs in a basket completes the processing as well. Kalkelis to enim shetarma, in the case of a basket of figs, which someone separated truma before its processing was completed, there is dispute. Rabbi Shimon matir, Rabbi Shimon permits eating the figs as a snack. Chachamim osim, but the Chachamim prohibit it. As we learned before, Rabbi Shimon does not accept the rule that truma sets the Maaser obligation, even if in the case of a basket of figs. Mishnah Hey, Haomer lechavero. If someone says to his friend, "Helach isr zev etain li ben chamesh te'enim," here is this isr coin, and give me 5 figs in exchange for it, and the figs are still attached to the tree. Lo yachol ad shi aser, and the buyer may not eat those figs even as a snack until he separates Maaseros from them, because selling produce sets its Maaser obligation. This is according to Remeir. Yehuda says, "Ochel achas pater." If he eats them one by one, as the seller gives them to him, he is pater from separating Maaser from them. If the seller combined 2 figs and gave them to the buyer together, he is obligated to separate Maaser before he eats them. Rabbi Yehuda said, there was a story involving a rose garden that was in Jerusalem. And the figs that grew in that garden were sold with 3 or 4 figs for an Easter, which is a coin. They were picked by the owner of the garden and given to the buyer one by one. And Shimon and Maaser were never separated from the figs of the garden. That shows that even when figs are sold, they may be eaten one by one without being Maasered. Omer, Mr. Vav. Omer, the Chaveru, someone said to his friend, Heilach, Isser Zeb, Esser Te'enim Shet, Shavarli. Here is this Isser in exchange for 10 figs that I will choose for myself from your trees. Borer ve'ochel. You may choose figs one by one and eat them as he picks them without being Maaser Maaser. Since he is taking and eating them before the processing is completed, the Maaser obligation did not begin. If he says, in exchange for a cluster of grapes that I choose for myself, you may pick 1 grape at a time from the cluster while it is still attached to the vine and eat it without separating Maaser. If he says, in exchange for a pomegranate I will choose for myself, he may pick out 1 seed at a time from the pomegranate while it is still attached to the tree and eat the seed without separating Maaser. Could you imagine picking 1 seed out at a time of a pomegranate? And pomegranate has like hundreds of seeds. You take 1 at a time. You need a lot of patience for that. If he says, in exchange for a melon that I'll choose for myself, he may cut off 1 thin slice at a time while the melon is still attached to the ground and eat without separating Maaseros. Aval, however, if the buyer said to the seller, here is this Isser in exchange for these 20 figs growing on the tree, or in exchange for these 2 clusters of grapes hanging from the vine, or in exchange for these 2 pomegranates on the tree, or in exchange for these 2 melons that are attached to the ground, he may eat them in his normal way. He may even pick 2 or more of them at one time, stack them, and he is exempt from taking Maaser. Because he bought the fruit when it was still attached to the ground, and produce that is attached to the ground cannot become set for Maaser, even by being sold. It's still attached to the ground. Mishnah Zayin. Hasocher es hapoa lixos ima b'teinim. Someone hires a worker to help him spread out figs to dry. Amalo, and the worker said to him, that I will work on the condition that I can eat figs while at work. Ochel upater, he may eat the figs as a snack and is pater from separating meiser. Even though he said he wanted to be able to eat the figs as part of his wages, he was entitled to them as a worker anyways, without being taken to them as wages. Therefore, the figs he takes are not considered payment for his work, and he may eat them as a snack without separating meiser. However, if he says, I will set work on the condition that I and the members of my household can eat figs, or I will work on the condition that my son can eat figs as part of my wage, he may eat and is exempt from separating meiser from what he eats because he eats by right and not by agreement. And his son, or the other members of his household may eat, but he is obligated to separate mices from them. First, since the son received the figs only as payment for his father's work, these figs are considered bought, and they must have mice separated before they can be eaten. Only the worker has the right to eat while he's working, and not the other family members. Um, or if he says, I will work on the condition that I can eat figs while we spread them out to dry, and even after we have spread them out to dry. He may eat figs at the time he spreads them out and is exempt from separating mice. However, after they have been spread out, he may eat, but he is obligated to separate mices before eating them. Torah, he is not eating at the time based on the right granted to him by the Torah, meaning that right applies only while he's working with the produce. So once he finishes spreading them out, he's no longer working with them, and and therefore he doesn't get them. He may eat them afterwards only because the owner gave him a right to do as part of his wages. Therefore, in that case, he must separate miser before he begins to eat. This is the someone who eats produce based on the right granted to him by the Torah as a worker is exempt from misering his produce. However, someone who does not eat based on the right granted to him by the Torah, but only by agreement with the owner, is chayav to mafish meiser before eating. And finally, Mishnah Ches, haya os bilbasim. Someone was working with a vasim fig, a type of low quality fig. Lo yochel v'no sheva. He may not eat b'no sheva figs, which is a type of high quality fig. V'no sheva. And if he was working with b'no sheva figs, lo yochel b'levusim. He may not eat the wisdom figs that are worth. A worker can only eat from the type of fruit that he is working with. Aval moneyahu as asmo ashmegia makom. However, while he is working with the lower quality figs, he may, if he wants, hold himself back from eating until he reaches the place where the high quality figs grow, and he can then eat his fill while he works on them. Someone who trades produce with his friend in any of the following ways. This person, is giving him produce that's ready to eat, and that person gives him back produce that's ready to eat. Or this person gives some produce that's laid out to dry and not yet ready to eat, and he returns in kind with produce that was laid out to dry, not ready to eat. Or this person gives him produce that is ready to eat, and that person gives him back produce that is laid out to dry, is not yet ready to eat. Chayiv. In all of these cases, each person is chayiv to separate meiser from the produce before eating. Because trading for produce is like buying it. Since each person traded for the produce he's not going to eat, you cannot snack on it without separating meiser. Rav Yehuda Omer, Rav Yehuda says, Hamachlif lech chayiv, the one who trades the produce that's ready to eat is chayiv to separate meiser before eating it, because it was completely processed when he bought it. Alexo is putter, but the one who trades for produce that had been laid out to dry is exempt from Mafresh Meiser because the produce he bought was not completely processed when he bought it. That is the end of Perek Beis. We will continue tomorrow with Perek Gimel. Have a wonderful day. Thank you for joining us.